Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad, and I want to bring to you the best of wishes and the most positive of news and the best of intentions. But no. Usually the first week of Jan is sort of like the Monday blues, right? Everyone rethinks their life and they rethink what they want to do for themselves and what version of themselves they want to present for the new year and what they want to work on, these targets, these goals, these resolutions, and they kind of keep shooting themselves in the foot, but they also kind of have a glimpse of hope, which is adorable. That I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was just going on about, oh, this year, bro, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this every day. I'm gonna add this element in my life every day. I'm gonna play a sport. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get fit. I'm gonna look a certain way. I'm gonna feel a certain way, and that got me also all excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna add on this. And then I just took a breath and a sip of beer, and I was like, wait a second, dude. What I find interesting was me 3 years back would have been the same guy, because it's almost, if you break down the months of the year into a week, then you kind of have November, December like the weekend, right? And you kind of let loose and you kind of say, you know what, I'm going to go off a little bit. I'm not going to do what I want, because it's a Monday to Friday approach that you're all disciplined through the week. You have a routine. You eat healthy. You work. You put in a lot of time into yourself, and then you let loose over the weekend. I apologize. I can't. There's no quiet time in this house. I don't know if you can hear that, but I apologize. And it's something or the other, and I feel like. Anyhow, no point. I apologize if you hear that noise. That's Andrew Tate trying to get out of the room. Anyhow, and there's this idea that you are kind of letting loose and kind of dropping a certain kind of person that you are to come back to it, or to come back to a better version of it after the weekend, right? You're like, oh no, when Monday comes, I'll again get fit, again I'll eat healthy, and again I'll have my routine. But I was thinking, for the first time in, I think, my life, I never approached December like, oh wow, it's the season to celebrate, it's the season to let loose, it's the time of the year where everything just, goes out of the window. I'm just going to fuck around and start again in January. And because along with that comes a few things, right? One is this build up, this anticipation, this kind of exuberance of ending the year on a bang, and then as a result you have the come down, you have this beginning, you have this low period, you have this sense of, okay, let me gather myself. But for the first time, I actually treated December just like another month, and as a result, treating January just like any other month. And what it's giving me is a sense of balance, right? Yeah, I did go out more often than I did throughout the year in December. I mean, this year, or rather 2022, was a year where I hardly went out because I just wanted to take it easy. I want to be at home. I became a father, and I just really enjoyed my days more than my nights, because that was a strange thing for me, being in the space of comedy shows. I was pretty much out so much the years before that for me, sleeping at 10:30 and not waking up early, but just waking up before noon was a real good feeling. And I was like, wow, this is good. I can sustain this. I don't have to basically be miserable at 6 p.m. and then come to life to perform for others, then again go into my shell of misery, be a bit of a bitch at home to everyone till 6 o'clock again the next evening. So that put me into this cycle where I would just be horrible to everyone around me at home, to myself, until I was in that space with other comedians, with alcohol, with my jokes, and that honestly burnt me out. Not even burnt me out, it made me a wreck. It made me a shell of who I was and shell of who I really am. But the past year, or the past 2 years, has given a sense of enjoy everything that you do. You can enjoy your days, you can enjoy your evenings, you can enjoy being with yourself, you can enjoy being with friends, but you do it because you want to, and you do it because you choose to do it, and you do it because it gives you a sense of fulfillment, if you want to call it, or gives you a sense of joy, if you want to call it, or it gives you a sense of, completion, that it makes you feel like a part of you has been extended through that activity, or that through that act, or through that sense of creation, or that sense of resolution, or whatever the word you want to call it. I don't want to focus too much on words, but of course you have to when you're doing a podcast, Sandeep. Fair enough. So what I just want to talk about is this idea that everything has to go to a certain build-up and has to then crest over and then have this sense of I think it's good once in a while to have a sense of release. I think that's really important. And I've had my fair share. If you guys have listened to this podcast in December, you probably heard me a bit of a wreck after a couple of heavy nights. But when I was doing it about 200 days a year to 250 days a year, that was my pretty much go-to kind of phase or go-to kind of place in my life. And as a result, I would really sort of look at my life, or rather at least pretend to look at my life for others, saying, what is your plan for the new year? And I would say all these things because that's what's expected to say, expected to be heard rather, in the first week of the year. So if you again are out on a Monday night in the first week of January, people are like, dude, you need to take it easy. You need to slow down, man. Come on, make some resolutions. You need to get your life back on track. You need to get your life in your hands. And that just leaves so much control to others, and you're doing it more because they are seeing you in that light and you don't want to be judged, as opposed to when you do things when you want to do them, how you want to do them, and what you want to do them for. You can do it throughout the year. It's the word sustainable. It's the word that is enjoyable. It's the word that is fulfilling. And you do it sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes you do it because you want to commit more time to it. Sometimes you don't feel like. But the biggest thing is that you're doing it on your terms. You're doing it from a place of deciding where you've come from, and you're deciding in yourself, within yourself, why that particular activity is in your life and how you want to do it, why you want to do it, when you want to do it, where you want to do it. And these things give you a sense of not doing it for others, but doing it for yourself. So when you do that, you don't really have a weekend. You don't really have a weekday. You don't have an end of the year bash. You can of course have it all. That's how you choose to express yourself and express your end of the year or your weekends, or how you decide to spend time with yourself or your friends or your family. But what happens is that you're not pulled in different directions by various people's opinions or various people's invitations and various people's judgment as a result of those invitations, whether you take it up or you turn it down. And you become a little bit more of a balanced person, of course, who is absolutely prone to fucking up every so often. But what ends up happening is that you become a little bit more man, this guy needs a hammer through his head. Yeah, balance, guys, balance. And it ends up becoming a lot less stressful when it comes to trying to please people and trying to explain to people why you want to come out, or why you have to behave in a certain way, or expected to do a certain set of things that they see you as, or they saw you as, and you have to fulfill that role that they have created for you and which you played into, because that was just the easier way to deal with the dynamics of that group. And breaking it is hard. And breaking it comes with a lot of questions, a lot of judgment, and a lot of criticism sometimes, and even questions like, oh, is everything okay in your life? Because you're not that guy we used to know. And of course, that's the person you didn't know, but that's the person I know now. And if you're a friend or you're someone who really wants to come along on the journey with me, you'll try and make the effort, or we will try to meet at a place that you'll understand this person I am. And if suits you, or if it's meant to be, or if it's supposed to be a friendship that continues, then we kind of kind of not evaluate, but we reform these bonds based on, I wouldn't say a new version, but on these things that you have decided to do for yourself. And I think that's very important, because it gives you a sense of continuity. It gives you a sense that there's no end and beginning. It's just a kind of flow that results in these things that keep repeating, and they are done through intention and through choice of your own, and not through forces that are beyond you. So I just wanted to say that, and I just wanted to say that it's great to start January without this entire sort of beating yourself up for what you did in December, or trying to sort of dig deep within, which you're not doing, or which you supposedly seem to do, but you're just sort of sitting there and going, oh man, I will become fit. No, it's all great, but just decide and realize what you're saying to yourself, why you're saying it, and what you really want out of it. So anyway, Happy New Year to everyone listening. And I think I really appreciate all of you listening to this podcast for the past months, quite a few months now past. Yeah, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. And today's guest is quite a remarkable man. His name is Harish Hande. He's the founder of SELCO Foundation, an organization that is working towards decentralizing power, to take it away from these central hubs which have a top-down approach to development, to empowering people, and they look at empowering on a local level. And one of the projects, in fact, one of the main avenues they've taken through or towards this effort is solar powering of healthcare centers, and they've done it across quite a few states where they've made a lot of these healthcare centers independent and away from the main power grids, and these places are able to sort of stand alone and support themselves. I talked to Harish about various other approaches and what the entire idea of decentralizing and how he sees the future along those lines. And we talk about various things. We talk about the urban landscape. We talk about development. We talk about what it means to be modern, what it means to be efficient, what it means to be a city that is cohesive, a city that is divided, and various other things that make sense in a world that's being torn apart second by second, politically, economically, socially, culturally, and developmentally as well. So Harish is a fount of information in this space of urban sustainable and rural sustainable and in general sustainable development. And he's a joy to speak to, and I really thank him for being on the podcast. And you are in store for, not a surprise, it's a conversation, but you are in store for a very, I think, relevant and fun and insightful conversation. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Mr. Harish Hande from SELCO Foundation, only here on the SoapyRao show. And as always, thank you for listening. Till next time, goodbye, God bless. Take care of yourselves. Cheers. Mr. Harish Hande, welcome to the SoapyRao show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Sandeep, for inviting me.
My pleasure. No, this is like almost like I see it as, you know, a return from my platform to your platform back to my platform. So it's nice.
Absolutely.
It's nice to catch up with you on the show. And I want to, you know, as Indian expectations go, you've had a pretty illustrious career, right? When it comes to when every mother sits her child on her lap and says, you must do these things. Which is the perceived way of succeeding in our country. You've done it. You did the engineering route. You did the master's MBA route. I'm not sure, was it MBA or was it just a master's?
PhD, yeah, so-called.
An MBA, right?
No, PhD, useless PhD.
Oh, PhD. Okay, so you're a doctor. Okay, so doctor.
Also Dr. Faltuga. Anyway.
No, because it looks like they're dishing out doctors everywhere. We see our politicians getting the titles. So
5 years confusion gets you a doctorate degree because you have nothing else to do, and or confused to what to do, you get a degree in the middle. Yeah. And so whenever somebody says I have a PhD, I now know that he or she also has wasted 5 years of time.
But no, I get it. I get the idea that these things have weightage when it comes to the mind. And of course, there are people who've really sort of benefited humanity by doing these studies, right? But how was the path laid out for you after doing the right thing when it comes to studying hard and going to the right institutions? How did that shape up for you after those early years?
I think, the issue is, I tell you a bit of where I grew up though being from Karnataka parents, grew up in Odisha, in Rourkela, where the issue was that if you don't get into IIT, you're not a good student. Right. So and also while playing cricket, like even if you did a little bit of studying, it's like you get into IIT. The problem, that's where everything starts. I mean, unfortunately, and I see many of the IITians are a one exam wonder. In a sense that exam ho gaya to ho gaya, finished, right? We get an engineering degree, but we're not engineers.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying once that finish line is crossed at the entrance exam, the learning stops.
That's it. And then why did I get into IIT? Basically, 300 million Indians did not write that exam, right? So it's very selective, elusive, in a sense that you went to a certain type of school. Tell me how many of the other colleagues in rural areas could have easily got into, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very small batch of people, and then you basically clap your back and saying that how elite schools that you go into, etc. So then obviously it's like a bed and bakri. you're going to masters and PhD because that's what you're supposed to so-called pushed into, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's when I went to the US and I had a chance to go to Dominican Republic in 91, where I saw a friend of who became a later friend of mine who 10 houses were putting solar and people were paying for it in 1991.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then came and realized, boss, to ask my professor that, sir, I have studied in Rourkela, where my father didn't have to pay electricity bill. Went to IIT where the taxpayers paid for my fees. I've come to the US on a scholarship, so I'm a product of subsidy here, standing in front of you. And then I'm going to do and so-called stay. And I said, boss, I don't want to do a PhD where it's not going to be read of. I didn't want to do that at all. Where it's going to be in a junk. So came back to India and Sri
Almost
Lanka.
like that, what you said, sorry, Harish, is that many of these dissertations or whatever they do at the PhD, it remains at that level. It's just lovely sounding in that boardroom when your panel hears it out, and it's sort of confined to the cobwebs of academia. It doesn't ever see the light of day, right?
At all. And then you have a title, right, doctor? Like, for example, say we keep saying that if you and me did a PhD on sugarcane, we'll call be doctors. While the farmer doing 45 years of sugarcane will never be given a PhD, but he or she will be sitting on the ground and we'll be on the panel discussing how sugarcane can be, right?
Yeah.
So this man-made certification is what likely completely.
And that's a very interesting thing. So I want to talk about, of course, the solar aspect with your professor and that transition. But you said something which is so important to look past, because that's in some way constricting our mindsets especially in India, but also around the world. This perceived success, right? Whether it is a title or an institution. What happens with the IITs is that the institution gives this automatic prestige and automatic doors open, right? And it could be the Harvards, could be wherever.
Right.
But we still are so gripped by it, right? We're so gripped in awe of, my God, IIT, IIM combination.
Right.
So we don't even look past that title to know what kind of human being resides over there. And as a result, are these institutions even good? I don't know. I haven't been. But are they, is there scope? Because they may be, as you said, like the farmer who's got 45 years of experience in the field with the plant, with the product, or with the way it's used. That could be the metaphor for an engineering college or an institution. Let's not call it any particular department. That is actually putting good work and a good amount of resources and feedback into its students and creating better students, but not with the title of IIT. So how do we, from your experience, because you've also gotten to this, you had that question in 91, right? Like, what am I doing with this degree or with this PhD or with this dissertation? So can you just comment on where we are in that space? Because you also invited me to talk at your conference, which was the Impact Failure Conference, which very few people are willing to do, which is admit failure and see how you can learn from failure, right? In a very simple way. So can you comment on that from on what I just sort of spoke about from that aspect of your learning?
Because see the way we are structured, in education systems in India or elsewhere, where the objective or the incentive is the grade, not the learning, and so we are never taught, or we are never what you call it is the incentive is never to ask questions about from a learning perspective, right? Grade will get machine. So, I mean, to be truly, I mean, I keep asking, what is the contributions? I mean, when IITs were started, I mean, if you see IIT Kharagpur ke samne, it's written in service of the nation. We always ask which nation.
Yeah.
Right. And which nation, right? In a sense, you're paying, your 90% of your money comes from the taxpayers, and basically the poor buying salt and sugar, and that sales tax has led to you going into IIT, right?
Yeah.
So if you truly want to look at your stakeholders, where are your stakeholders that you have looked into? You might go to the US and make millions of dollars, and I'm going to ship my charity money. Sorry, that's not what it is about. It's not about those peanuts. What did you learn, and how are you going to make an equitable society inclusive is what you come out. Unfortunately, the IITs have actually got worse in terms of being away from what you call it as worse in terms of it's a Xerox machine shop in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
IIT and then IM or an IAS, but not about true engineering. Kya karna chahiye? If I like go to, in many of these IITs, the machine is the same old 50 years old machine, not linked to. And somewhere I think they have to put. And second problem, what I see is that why have we created this hierarchy of ITIs, blah blah blah, NITs and IITs, right? They all have to be in the same line, boss.
Yeah.
I need to do something. I will go into vocational schools, just like Germany, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do something. I go into engineering. Why can't an ITI student have access to the labs in IITs? Because it's taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
And this is where we have created exclusive from public money. And that is what I have a big problem about of that elusiveness that you have created large walls in all of these IITs where normal, young, brilliant innovators from non-English speaking backgrounds do not have access to. And that we fundamentally fail to be an inclusive society and institutions. These are not inclusive institutions at all in many ways. Yeah.
And what I get baffled by is you just mentioned the example of Germany, right? I've got some friends and I've got family in neighboring Switzerland. And what really struck me there, of course, they aren't as flashy as, say, the United States when it comes to their billionaires and millionaires. But of course, it's home to Zurich, which is one of the richest cities in the world. But what I'm quite, of course, what stuck out to me is the pride or the importance, let's not say pride, the importance given to every job. Now, when a carpenter comes home, he is going or she is going to do that job so well because they enjoy the process of making it, and that job is valued by society. So what you said right now is so interesting, right? That if the farmer was given his or her due, if the person who makes those baskets, those buttis for people to buy with pride, that's as important as someone who's collecting the fruits. You have to put it somewhere. Or even something as simple as we're a country of so many engineers. Why aren't any of the other engineering jobs done well? Why aren't we making better roads? Why aren't we making better bridges? Why aren't we? Why is it only the electrical and the computer science that is saluted, right? And everyone comes out saying, I'm a computer engineer. And why? I mean, yeah, exactly. Why aren't we making more engineering marvels in our country with so many engineers living here?
No, that's because and one step behind, when you start about, like previously we started about these degrees and honorary degrees of PhD. How many farmers in our country have actually got an honorary PhD from any of the agricultural universities, right?
Yeah.
Why are they not the way they dress, they will not be allowed into the agriculture. You forget any other. Yeah. They will not be allowed to enter the agricultural universities, right?
Yeah.
Right. And the very fact is that you're studying about them, but they will not be allowed into, right? So
that's ridiculous.
So this is where the issue is, and secondly, the whole engineering per se, like we are not hands-on. I mean, we joke when the US and Europe, for example, you have this. So I don't know about Europe, but you have this Home Depots, right? In the US, where you have the large warehouses where you can go and buy wood, saw. Yeah. How many Indians actually go there?
Yeah.
At all, right? You see, the Americans say, I want to build my pool. I want to repair my pool. How many Indians will say, I want to repair my pool this weekend, right?
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's crazy that you said that, right? Like even IKEA, how many can fix it, right?
Kisko call karu main yaar? Terko, do you know a carpenter? Should I call? So what's your mechanical engineer? But I have no clue about mechanical engineering, right? You tell me the thermodynamics of a car, I will draw to the hilt on a board. You show me a car, I will run away. And that is where a fundamental issue is: practicality, pragmatism. And we believe that hands-on is lower in our strata.
So, yeah, there's a hierarchy of jobs.
Yes. Hierarchy of thinking, right?
Thinking, also. Yeah. Like a person... even a person who spends a ton of money on a German sedan or a high-end car, now will, of course, after the warranty by the dealer is run out, they will look for the cheapest thing when it comes to mechanics, right? They're like, no, I don't want to spend so much on servicing my car or getting my car fixed because some guy can do it for cheap, Right. So I get what you're saying. I get that this is the pragmatism. But why is that way of thinking even sustained? because it clearly isn't good, right? It's clearly a cutting corners way of thinking, which has prevented us as a country, but maybe even as a society, from adopting things like, why don't we have the most, I wouldn't say the fanciest, but the most efficient cars? Because see, we're also managing a population of 1.3 billion people, so we need to come up with practices that aren't always coming from America or Europe, because their numbers are less, their climate is different, their society functions differently, their consumption of food is different. So why can't we come up with practices that are suitable, efficient, economical, and applicable to a context which is uniquely India, right?
Sandeep, I'll tell you, no, but there's a one step problem behind that. I'll tell you a typical example being some years ago, when see we work in the field of sustainable energy for rural areas and trying to solve this or create appropriate solutions for poor to have better livelihoods and access to health using solar energy, right? So there are kids who join. Okay, fundamental problem for some of these kids, I tell you, are the parents. Okay, parents come to me and said this was some years ago, and said that sorry sir, he's joined SELCO. I agree, it's a great but you know, his cousin in Infosys earns 1.5 times more. Don't you think he should be doing this after he's 60 years old? Okay. Then I stopped the conversation. I just said, how was the traffic and how was the roads? And both of them started complaining how the roads were bad. I said, that's the problem. We want Mahatma Gandhi to be born in neighbor's house, not your house, right? We want somebody else to solve that issue. And moment you turn around, Sandeep, and ask people, boss, you see a water leaking or a garbage not collected, and tell people, okay, forget criticizing the government. Can you give me 5 solutions? Well, I don't know. It's not. That is where you said, why can't we build? Because we do not know how to articulate a problem statement. We are not taught that way. We only open the textbook and see the answer on the last page and then try to solve how to get the answer. My goal is answer, not the process. Right. And that is a flaw that we have, is why I'm linking to our non-hands approach to our ability to solve a pragmatic problem. I can write a code, right? But you tell me a real life problem that I need to look at India 2030 and solve the transportation issues. Can I come up with 10 different models of mass transportation or high efficient vehicles? Abhi main kahan se cut paste karu? Germany ka kya? Can I cut paste from what they have done rather than rethinking from zero? And that is where we need to change and push. Second part, Sandeep, I'll tell you, is that we also lack access for the glorification of failures. We glorify success, right?
Yeah.
Like when girl comes home, said 96 mila, the first question is 4 marks kahan chala gaya, right? Rather than saying, what do you do when? Where is failure capital here? Where, boss, come and fail. You want to experiment? Come and fail. We are not innovative. Sandeep, if you fail once, in India, I'll never give you money because you have failed once. In California, oh, you failed once, let me give you money. You know what not to repeat again. That risk-taking ability ecosystem is very, very missing, and that needs to change, Sandeep.
There's also a social tag attached to the failure, right? Because it's almost like, because he failed or she failed, and we are so caught up in this narrative that whatever kind of success, outcome-based success, is also related to human worth, that a good person means a successful person. A person who's failed is also a bad person or not a good person. So how do you, I'll give you that conversation which I was sitting at, right, with you at your conference with Nitin and his the CEO of his initiative, the Rain Matter initiative, right? And what struck me was the focus on Nitin Kamath that day. Because clearly he was not there in that role as the founder of a hugely successful company. I mean, of course, but I would expect the focus, since it was about failure, to be 2 minutes on the company, then go into what his foundation's doing, right? Because that's also sustainable. But it felt like everyone just wanted to hear how he got to 1,000 crores or how much of an amount, right? And I was just like, man, that guy actually was saying stuff relevant to that particular context on that day. But it felt like the focus was constantly being pulled away from what he wanted to talk about and the topic of the conversation. Then it was being pulled away towards, how did you become so good? How did you become so successful? How did you make the first million? And I was just like, If a conference like that, which not the conference itself, but the people who were there were supposedly the future of sustainable development, if they only wanted to know, if they want to know only about his success, and the guy who was talking about spearheading the initiative, which is Rain Matter, was given like 10% of the time, and I found that very surprising.
Right. We get, that's where we say, I mean, I'm glad you pointed that, because the whole push for the foundation, for the failure conference, was that stop glorifying success and stop criticizing failures, right? And everything. And we are saying that there's a success in every failure and there's a failure in every success. It's don't paintbrush both of it. And fortunately, in some of the panels went brilliant in terms of people were very brutal with themselves, but some, and this was also to inspire youngsters, was stand up and say, I failed. And I have succeeded, but be careful. These are the parameters that led me to the success, but don't glorify yourself in many ways, right? So that's
and I feel he wanted to do just that. He wanted to highlight that, but I feel so many times you don't ask the right questions, you don't allow that person to express what they really feel, right? Because you kind of almost sugarcoat it, saying no, of course you failed, but look where you are today. None of that matters, because today is not, it's today, today's amount, but it's also the way of thinking, which I really liked the things that he said, Nitin said, but profits are slowing down, but that's because we're looking at the long goal. And how many successful people would say that, right? Because the moment you smell success, you want more, quicker, faster.
Scale up, yes.
Yeah. So I think that is important, but I feel as you just mentioned, right? The how do you, let's look at the idea model of failing, right? Now when you attempt an idea, but also attempt an idea on scale, which is publicly visible, whether it's roadworks or whether it's a energy plant, renewable energy plant, especially say, let's go down the path that you're representing in some form with energy, renewable energy, right? When there's already a case against it, or rather when the profits are against it, and when the established norm is burning fossil fuels, and you have jobs like Shell, and you have companies like Schlumberger, which are just such attractive, fancy corporate offices with glass and chrome and steel, and you have people coming out of there with $1 million plus bonuses. So if the case is already set in the conventional way of thinking for these jobs, for these companies. And then you have a couple of people who, like, Greta Thunberg or someone screaming, going, oh, the planet is dying and we're going. So clearly now your attempts are going to be viewed critically already. Like, oh God, look at these hippie green energy people making noise and, disrupt, because everything looks good from a distance, right? Even when you're going on a protest march, or when you're going to make a case for funding for an organization, it's not an attractive job. It's you aren't treated with respect by people giving you funding. You're seen as those charitable poor people who will take our money, correct? So how do you, how did you do it?
That's changed. Sandeep, over the years, it has changed that. So when we first entered in way back, I would say 91, 92, most of the people in the sector were the hippies.
Right.
Okay. And in a sense, the top 5 people who bought solar in 1990 worldwide, right? The total capacity installed that time in 91 is what world does in an hour today, or 2 hours. Okay.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay.
And that time it was Saddam Hussein who wanted to solar power his palaces, so that if Bush bombed the power station, he would still have electricity. The LTT Tigers, who wanted basically the batteries to be charged so that they could launch missiles, number one. Then the ganja growers of California, right? Because it removed the spikes when helicopter go forward to see whether somebody is going marijuana or not, right? So there were the 5, 6, which then evolved into over the years. But now what has happened is, what you said is 2 ends when you have the Shell and the Gretas, right? In terms of, but what is happening with both sides have an issue one way or the other. One is, let me look at the activism on the green side, which basically says, no, but doesn't say how are the 5 yeses.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And like, nahi chahiye. Okay, so people say no coal. Okay, boss, band karo. Tomorrow you can't do this Zoom or a cell phone, right? What
I mean,
will you do?
she can absolutely. She might, I mean, leave something as fanciful, because she probably say, oh, but you're a privileged person. I don't need Zoom like you, or something,
Right.
some nonsense. So,
Right.
but even food, she won't get to eat the next day, right? Because
And
everything is powered by coal. Yeah.
there is a transition that we need to look at, and there are places where you need to do showcase, right? What we are saying today is that in many of the areas, in the livelihoods and the health case, where it is economically viable for, if I look at from a government perspective, I have to push that in the health, I have to prove that by putting solar, the government is saving money on diesel and power, and are able to give services to the remote part of this country. Those two are tick marks. And today, solar is in a position to showcase, but do it and show it. Like, for example, in Meghalaya, we did like, say, 10 or 20 public health centers. Okay. Suddenly, the government of Meghalaya said, boss, you've shown us 10 or 20. We want to completely power solar by 23 March. By March to June, Meghalaya will be 100% solar powered of all health centers.
That's
Okay.
That's an entire state.
Entire states. Manipur is following, saying that by December of 23 or March of 24, they will be 100% solar. They are not going from an environmental perspective. The good part of doing that is they want services reliable at the last mile, where the climate goal is an added benefit, not the centerpiece, right? And today you need to talk what is Sandeep's incentive, right? What is government's incentive to provide reliable health services?
Yeah.
And everybody can paintbrush, boss, corrupt hai, nahi hota. There are champions in every industry that we catch hold of the champions, right?
Yeah.
Showcase. Now suddenly Manipur and Meghalaya has got interested. Oh, let us look at Mizoram is telling, what have you done in Manipur, Meghalaya? Can you actually do it? Now suddenly Nagaland is saying, let's actually do it. It's how do you showcase? And now because 7 states are interested, and that's a magic number which I didn't know, Sandeep, that once you do 7 number, Government of India gets interested. Like the head of the Secretary Health says that, can we do it in other parts of the country? Showcase. That's why we are saying that we are not an activist. We are saying that this is the most reliable and affordable way of providing solar for health or livelihoods. Do it, use banking. So that's where the traction from the funders and the traction from the government is like, okay, this is increasing somebody's income. This is increasing in somebody's income during COVID, when the centralized systems had collapsed. We were able to create livelihood centers in rural areas, or storage, for example. When the lot of vegetables were lost, we created cold storages, solar powered, where people could store their storages, store their vegetables, which didn't. It's what is the problem statement? The problem statement is better health, better education, livelihoods. And solar is a means to go to that. That's all. So
how do you change this way of thinking? Because even like, let's say something with transport, it almost feels like every company is like, oh, because Elon Musk made the Tesla car so successful, we're all going to make electric cars. But it almost feels like no one's getting the idea is to have clean transport, right? Now, whether
idea is one step before. Idea is to go from A to B. So the question, what is the problem statement?
Yeah.
Right. The problem statement is not transportation. The problem statement is that X number of people have to go to Y number of spots to do that.
Yeah.
Either we have improperly created the job scenarios where poor from X part of Bangalore have to actually go to Y part of Bangalore. And so you've created unsustainable way of workplaces and housing spaces, right?
Yeah.
And then you've put that in the wrong place, and now you're rectifying that by a transportation. So your wrong will always remain wrong. So you're doing a band-aid.
So the premise itself is completely approached incorrectly, because I mean, that seems like what you, sorry, just to, before you go on with the thing, because it makes so much obvious sense when you just said it the way you did. It's like you would plan a city from that premise, right? What is the thing we're building right now? It's for people to habitat, right? And then work and coexist and feed and do things that they need to have a fulfilling life. That would be your statement. Right. But it almost feels like we're undoing a big mistake, right?
No, I see. If you look at even if you look at two examples, right? In the I don't know about the other parts of the city, but in Jayanagar, when the whole concept of Jayanagar was being set up, they said that every would have one religious place, one art theater, one school, one playground, one. And if you look at the whole area where Rangashankara is set up, you have a temple, you have a police station, you have a church, you have a school, you have a playground. That's
Yeah.
how it was structured in many ways, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you then scale up that structure rather than breaking that? And second, what happens is the more we design the transportation the way we are doing it, like e-mobility, the way we are thinking is non-exclusive in a sense that we are not looking at there is 60% of the population who needs a different sort of transportation, because there are maid servants, there are carpenters, there are the front end shopkeepers who come from enormous areas that 30 to 40% of their time and money goes into transportation.
Yeah.
And so by the time, and work-life balance is out of the way. So we need to rethink that e-mobility is the last point of, after you've done the efficiency of the thought process of why should we move at all, then looking at, okay, how is the population? Then looking at, should it be a mass transportation or individual transportation or shared transportation? Then e-mobility comes in. Now we
correct, because almost this e-mobility is also enhancing, or rather increasing their inability to get out of debt, right? You're putting them on more loans, you're putting them in more things to get, as opposed to stripping away these things, saying, no, let's take away these things and revisit the problem from a few steps back.
And class system also, Sandeep, saying that, boss, I am of a certain class, I will never take the metro.
Yeah.
So the issue is, why are we increasing e-mobility or e-cars or whatever, electric cars? Why don't we tax your occupation on the road depending on your size of the car? Why should a cyclist pay for the same that you are paying for, or you're paying for a larger car? Tax it, forcing people to. If the vice president of the World Bank can take a metro in Washington or New York, why our class systems can't do it? Why can't, like, for example, airport, right? There's a railway line to Bellary, which is not used 94% of the time. Increase the shuttle services, create airline counters at the railway station, put your bags in and sit. We could always think about, rather than now building a new metro line, that's okay. Why are you not using that? So the problem statements are not defined. And then again, go back, Sandeep, in schools, we are never asked, what is a problem statement? You create the problem statement per se.
And it's amazing that we seem to, many times when we're facing problems, it's not the same thing as the problem statement, right? Because we kind of make, sometimes a problem doesn't need more added to it, it needs stuff taken away.
Right.
And I think the approach that you said is take away the noise. And I think that's something which, going forward beyond, say, the Bangalore urban crisis, even with the world at large and multiple problems, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's food, whether it's energy, it seems like we're just adding more layers of distraction, under the guise of, we're solving the problem.
Right.
Which is clearly not helping, right? We're adding more electric cars, we're adding more batteries, we're adding more this thing. So how does one, when it comes to specifically solar energy, how does one start? So what was your problem statement in this situation?
Just like say, in solar itself, right? People say, let's put solar water pumps, Sandeep. Okay.
Yeah.
People say solar water pump. Hey, boss, I say, boss, solar water pump, if I put, what is the problem statement? It's better irrigation, right?
Yeah.
Why should I put a solar pump where water table is down and you want water for sugarcane? First, the problem is, why was sugarcane been grown in a place where water was a scarcity?
Yeah.
Right. Problem starts there.
Yeah.
But I've directly jumped into solar water pumps, right? So solar water pumps increases environmental unsustainability in this case, because by removing water, I'm lowering the water table. So solar water pump is actually not a good solution in many cases. Solar might be free, but water is not free. No, Baba.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of this. So the problem statement for us when we started frankly speaking, was more of justice in terms of what is the equity of justice, or how do you create an equal platform for every poor kid to access the services, whether it's education, livelihoods, and how do you create a platform? And we believed that decentralization thought process would lead, and solar was rightly fitting into the concept of decentralization. So unfortunately, Sandeep, we are known for solar, but our concept was, how do we use decentralization to make society more inclusive, and in a way that you can access services at your doorstep, whether education, livelihoods, health, resilient micro business, and solar nicely fits into that thought process. So that's when we started this concept of SELCO 27 years ago. Yes.
And that's such an attractive uh, idea, because I grew up in Bangalore. Of course, it's exploded in size with wealth or with disparity at the same time. So the decentralization idea is extremely interesting, because you kind of are in a society today where everyone wants these same things. And I don't want to go on again about those points of outcome based, material based, monetary based, but it seems to have a very strong grip on us, right? Whether it's the reach of the Amazons and the Flipkarts telling you that the more you have, the better, or it's the likes of apps that are reaching cell phones, or cell phones themselves, smartphones, reaching every corner of Indian society. You have this kind of you're building up these people, especially like people who don't have money, to this idea that if you get this, you're better, and then you create this thing that they can't have it, and it's creating a lot of friction, right? So the decentralized model is like, you know what, you sitting, say, in a really sort of remote village will definitely not have the same playing field as a person, say, in Bombay, in the south of Bombay. And that's not because of anything. It's just that because that is a reality, right? It's like the sugarcane in the desert. It's just not going to grow. So is it fair in saying, or because now if I just said that statement to someone, they say like, how dare you say that, because that guy deserves as much right. I'm like, it's not about rights, it's about reality, right? Because the reality is that person sitting in that village will have to work 100 times to even come to zero being, say, the starting point. And the guy in Bombay has to just take one step and he's already 100% more at an advantage. So what is interesting is, now if we try to tell 1.3 billion people that they have to do whatever it takes to be the next Mukesh Ambani or Elon Musk, it's going to create war. It's going to create mental war. It's going to create physical. It's going to create so much agony and so much suffering. But the other approach is saying, okay, you have this small village that you are in, empower them to be in a position to sort of enhance their situation in that society, in that village, and also take the village to the next step, because then you're one step closer to Bombay, right?
No. So the question is, I see this, I mean, the world is, everybody tries to judge rather than doing a proper argument with you. In a sense, people will say, oh, you're wrong. See, this is why the issue, we never debate when people say wrong or right, or let's debate about it rather than judging, right? So but see, the issue is, if we go to a village, for example, just take West Jantia Hills in Meghalaya, right? West Jantia Hills is known for the best type of turmeric. The original gene pool of turmeric is grown. The content is high, 7%, brilliant, right? So what are the best local resources? That is turmeric. What is absent is better methodology has new technologies been introduced for better washing, so the drudgery comes down, better cutting, so the drudgery comes down, better packaging, and value adding processing to turmeric. So that's a product that comes out of the village. Today, what happens? This raw turmeric is taken, the whole value add is taken by somebody else. And you only pay for the drudgery of the villagers per se. So the government of Meghalaya, Vijay and Mr. Conrad Sangma and all, they created this livelihood center. What we went in is we did solar powered the slicer, solar powered washer, solar powered packing machine. And now what has happened? These groups of women who have a livelihood center where tons of turmeric comes in, they pack it and sell it across, right? Market linkages. Suddenly you're upgraded to the village into the marketing of local produce as high value that actually gets exported in many ways, right?
Yeah.
Erie silk in East Garo Hills in Meghalaya, for example. That's the beauty of them. Create that ecosystem for them to add value process, and that's why decentralized energy innovation. Sorry, decentralized energy makes sense. What is missing, today you rightly said that I'm connecting it to the past half an hour, 45 minutes of our conversation, is that our innovation, engineering, and all the buzzword, all the words that we used, you and me, innovation and engineering, everything is for like local apps, right? I have done this app, my resume is about so many Apple, but nobody wants to work on a blacksmith blower. Nobody wants to work on a Erie silk spinner, right? Nobody wants to work on a slicer for a turmeric grinder, right?
Yeah.
This is why I'm telling you, this is where India is a leader, because we are a paradox of having the world's problems and complexities and diversity, but we also can come up with solutions where the Africans can take it from here. Where the terrain of Meghalaya is very similar to Ethiopia. So whatever we innovate in Meghalaya can actually be, so we should be a powerhouse of sustainable solutions. And this is what the youngsters should, it's a candy store of solutions for anybody who wants to look at sustainable development. And that is what we are saying, that where you go to the Erie silk farmers or the turmeric farmers, they just want to go a couple of days a month and say, would I want to watch a movie or not? But I'm doing enough earnings in the house where I'm actually sending 2 kids to education, and healthcare is right at the doorstep. Some population will leave. When people say they migrate to Bombay and create slum areas, the same population, I said, boss, please also get your 2 kids from US back. If that, it's the same thing, no? From slums to Bombay to the US is the same type of migration. So my issue is that if you create opportunities, there are a lot of people who are going to strive in their own localities in many ways.
And I think one thing beyond that, which is remarkable, is it comes back to this point, right? When you think you need to be someone else or be somewhere else, it becomes this premise which we are working and operating from for years. If I can do coding, or if I can drive, or rather I can't do these things, that as a result I have to work on it, as opposed to looking at, like, say, take India and draw it as a person, saying I have all these adversities, these challenges, these problems, these resources at the same time, which are uniquely mine. Right. Now, how can I work on it, as opposed to how can I make India into the US?
Right, exactly.
And I think all of us, are there. I told, I think when you asked me that question at the conference, I said, yeah, that's where I was, in that place, coming from this place of I can't see. As a result, I can't drive, I can't read, I can't run, I can't walk, I can't. So constantly trying to do that, as opposed to saying, what can I do?
Right.
And I think that's where you're pointing the us to that direction, right? Saying, look there, saying, empower these people who are facing the problem. Don't send a MBA graduate consulting them, saying, no, I'll give you a KPMG solution to your irrigation issue on the farm. Right. But empower that farmer who knows exactly where work needs to be done. And that's a decentralized model. That's brilliant.
No, I'll tell you one more thing. See, after the failures conference, we had a break of Sunday, but Monday, Tuesday, we had a South-South conference. We had 40 Africans who were there. Okay, they had come from Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, etc., etc. Okay,
yeah.
So we had 8 teams. One of the team, and we've sent them to different parts of the country where we were doing work.
Yeah.
8 members of the health from Sierra Leone had come in. Had I showed them Karnataka, they would have said, oh, it's too developed. Okay, Sierra Leone is 2% electrified. Right. Send them to Meghalaya.
Yeah.
Okay, showed them the health centers, made them meet the health secretary of Meghalaya. Suddenly they felt this is exactly like Sierra Leone. Why do I have to rely on the World Bank to give me what solutions is? Can I get a connection between Sierra Leone and Meghalaya? Right? Suddenly Meghalaya got its pride that I could solve a country's issue. Sierra Leone is 6 million. Meghalaya is 3 million. Right?
That's brilliant. I mean, it's giving pride, right? And
Exactly.
pride is, I mean, because let's not take away that, because
Right.
when someone gets, a huge bonus or a promotion, everyone's like, oh
Right.
wow, and gives, and that's the human need for recognition and pride. So
Right.
can we do that with these actions? Because it almost feels like the moment you talk about disability, or you talk about sustainability, or you talk about the words which end with ITY, it
Right.
always has like this sad instrument playing in the background,
Sure.
and it's
Sure.
seen as, oh, we'll do it, that poor thing mentality,
Right.
not the
Right.
celebration, pride, and take joy out of that kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is where we when the Ethiopians to South Odisha, Kalahandi district.
Yeah.
Suddenly, yeah, boss, can we have the DC of Kalahandi actually come and visit us in Ethiopia to give us similar solutions? So suddenly it did not become an Indian model. It became a model of same. I mean, linking the, because our problems and your problems are same. You guys have solved it in a similar terrain. Let's now copy it rather than wasting philanthropic money again to experiment. That's, as a country, we have so much to offer, Sandeep.
Just by virtue of the number of diverse situations, diverse people, diverse terrains, diverse resources, availability of resources, I mean, just the way when you shifted my uh, the way I was looking at it to this present way of how much we have to offer, I'm just like, I hardly, first of all, know much about India. I only know a little bit about the city I live in, but it makes you more curious about your own surroundings.
Right.
And that seems to be a great place to start. As opposed to saying, but the subways in Singapore are so brilliant. Let's
Right.
say, you know what? I have no footpath to walk down.
Right.
How do I start there? As opposed to comparing, how can my environment teach me?
Right. And how do we see, the question is, how do we create the Hussein Bowls? We keep saying the Hussein Bowls in, like, for example, in the primary health sector. How do we create the Hussein Bowls for a footpath in Dharwad, Bangalore versus Nagpur and say Shillong?
Yeah,
And that can be copied by Addis, Freetown in Sierra Leone, or by Dar es Salaam in Tanzania.
yeah,
So we have issues and rectify, rather than saying, yeah, you're right, forget Singapore, Europe, US. No, they've already gone. I think there has to be a paradigm shift in, because our issues are very different, and our
yeah.
issues are related to large amount of poverty and 1.3 billion people. We have to look, and for us, the responsibility is the 3.5 billion people who live in Indonesia, Philippines, and Africa and Latin America. And our responsibility is not about Europe and US. And we are looking the wrong way, Sandeep. We are not
Yeah,
looking
it's like
south.
there's no
Yeah.
point being Hussein Bolt in the ocean, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
that's where we are, I think.
And Usain Bolt of IT, ठीक है यार, IT
Yeah.
करेगा यार, but we have such more. IT is again a tool, but
Yeah.
we have made IT as a centerpiece, right?
We made it as the this thing. It's the crowning jewel, right?
Right,
It's
right,
the conversation starter.
right,
It's the way you get married. It's the way you find a partner. It's how you get a house, and that isn't even MBA is not a title, right? It's not.
right.
It's a tool.
Yeah,
So as you just said, it's such an amazing perception shift when we can actually give so much more to the rest of um, rest of the world, in the sense countries that can benefit from our problems and resources, if we only start looking at failure as a good thing, as something we can learn from.
so I'll come back to also the disability sector a bit.
Yeah,
The question is, we have a common friend, Firoz.
yeah,
Okay. The question is, when I was telling to Firoz, see, whenever people came to us from oh, can you put solar? The poor kids are not able to study. They have this, and it was always presented to us in a very charity mode. I said,
yeah,
boss, ये क्या है? What is this? I mean, ठीक है, एक महीना का दाल. I said, boss, how do we move away from the stupidity and use the talent? I mean, it's like, it's an analogy of like, oh, farmers don't know anything. The people with this X disability or that. Boss, why are we focusing? Why not we look at, okay, so boss, just taking an example, our point was, in the blind, why are we not creating the best, taking the best from, let's say, the Perkins School of Blind in Boston, get them to have 5-6 pilot centers in Bangalore, put in resources, they become the Hussein Bolts of looking at what are the opportunities, how do we create a completely new paradigm rather than doing cut paste and saying, oh, these guys can do this type of jobs. Can they do? No, I think we need a paradigm shift in thinking of how do
Just
you
like
move ahead, right?
just like how you said the focus has become IT. The
Ah,
focus here is blind. It's not. The
right,
idea is there are individuals who are so different and so diverse in their talents.
right,
And let's start with that. What can this person do in his or her life?
right,
As opposed to that, we're like, what can this blind person do?
right, exactly.
Because if that person, when you make the lack of sight the focus point here, then it's all about trying to see. And that's the
But also
problem,
you
right?
have
Like, why
created a
would I want to
hierarchy.
drive? It's so stupid, right? Like, I would rather, give me a better way of hearing, enhance what I have. But we clearly are working from this place going, what can, as opposed to looking at the person. And similarly, if you want to extend it
And
beyond
working
that,
with the person, we have created by sometimes what can this person do? I have created a hierarchy that I am going to decide what you are going to do,
yeah.
right? I'm not giving you a choice. Why not?
Why are
I
we even saying things like, oh, we
exactly,
employed these blind people? Isn't it
right.
these people
Why?
who we employed happen to have no sight? I mean, it's
Right.
such a powerful shift in the way of thinking, right? Because now I've automatically taken, say, 3 or 5 human beings and put them into this one box just by virtue of one sense, or rather lack of, as
Right.
opposed to 5 different individuals who are completely different, right?
Right. And then you say, oh, you're a social enterprise because we 50% of our people are black. Boss, give me a break. I
Yeah,
mean, a gender, no, 50% of our people are women. That means you're negating their own ability in many
yeah,
ways, right?
yeah,
And that is where we wanted to shift. Yeah, but this stupid that, and again it comes into this hierarchy thought process, Sandeep. And when people say, what do you change? I was somewhere we need to look at the third graders, the fourth graders, and the fifth graders to have a systemic change in that thing. And that's why with my frustration with Firoz was, hey boss, isko change karna hai. Arey, kya hai? Arey, this is and how do we create I mean, taking the same example, Hussein Bolts of looking at couple of 3 or 4 centers. So you negate the activism, you negate this language, semantics on which we judge and create. And this is where so that we are also not creating those places where we can follow, right? And that is what I was telling Firoz. Can we create those centers and then let people follow?
yeah. Because if you think like, say, the way in which we've been thinking, then you'll say all deaf people should be making footwear, all blind people should be making headphone cases. Now
Right,
the problem is, you'll be having really shitty headphone cases and footwear because all those people don't want to be doing that job.
right,
Not because of the quality of the job. It's just that there might be 5-20% who are brilliant at it because there
exactly,
happens to be a certain sense of connection with that job.
right.
But you're going to end up with unhappy, dissatisfied workers and shitty products, which is what's going on.
Yeah, no, so I mean, and that's where the issue is. No, in this where we work in the field of sustainability is where we use the term of beneficiaries, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we have helped X number of beneficiaries, and not using the financially underserved populations to be par. And see, we confuse between financial poverty and intellectual poverty, right?
Hmm.
So how do we use them? How do you make sure that we are partners? I have a certain skills, you have certain skills. Can we come up with a solution together and break this hierarchy that I'm going to give you X amount of solutions and you take it? And that's the whole, and that's why I said, unfortunately, we are known for Solar Sandeep, and that our focus is to equalize that sense of hierarchy. And that's the only way society can go up.
I think about this situation sometimes, right? I just like going into this what if imagination kind of place. If I was, say, planted 5,000 years back as a hunter gatherer, right? Or whatever the tribe at that point was doing. And I'm like, with all my so called uh, highlights that my ego attaches to, right? Whether it's what I have materially, what I have done comedically. I'm like, can any of these skills keep me alive back then?
Right.
And let's not be so dramatic, maybe. Let's say if I am moved right now to any place in the world, can I survive? And the case is no. Because the things we attach so much value to, our degrees, our jobs, our titles, that the thing that we sort of attach to success, can they be applied? Because as you said, can I go buy wood and put shutters in case there's a storm coming? Do I know
Right.
how to use a hammer, or do I know how to make my front yard? These basic skills, if which give you the ability to live and go everywhere. But we're creating more and more of these echo chambers where we feel like we're the best at it, but people pat us on the back and celebrate us. But it absolutely doesn't translate to real living, right?
So that's the whole point. I mean, when people said what would you change, in a sense, see, the question for me is like, how do we start looking at the second, third, fourth graders about
Yeah.
like move away from the concept of sustainability means recycling and planting trees.
Yeah.
The sustainability is much more than that, of inclusiveness and creating a program design process, right?
Yeah.
And that's when can I go to second, third, where before the formative years, get away and becoming hands-on in schools at second, third, fourth, fifth, rather than doing a science project. Science project should be institutionalized into every class, every class that you take, physics, maths, civics, should be a project rather than a separate competition of projects. And how do you break away from this competitive concept and then showcase, and then by the time they are 9th, 10th, see, my scare part and the hope, because India is a very young population, where is India going to throw out program thinking designers for 2030 or 2035? Or are we going to create these cookie cutters for the McKinseys and the ENYs, which is why you will have the large companies coming up. So that's the nervousness or the race against time that we are leading to. So because
We're
India
heading
is
more
in the
in
right
the
position,
cookie cutter option.
yeah. So because India is in the right position to look at these countries. See, if you go to Tanzania, Sandeep, 99 of the people who are trying to advise the Tanzanians are the Europeans and Americans. I'm nothing against, brilliant characters, smart guys, right?
I mean, they're the
But
ones who can actually build. Like you ask a chief engineer there, and if there's something wrong with the pipeline, he'll fix it. He's not going to call.
we where a lot of the guys from local areas, rather than the Indians in Delhi or else going and advising the Africans,
Yeah.
why can't we do the brilliant farmers of Karnataka going and teaching or working with the farmers of Ethiopia to actually do that?
Yeah.
And that needs to shift. And I think that's where I would say the next 3 years goal for us is to make sure that that connection, and the goal is like obviously where we kill ourselves, that we shouldn't exist after 5-7 years, that we are able to institutionalize it at least in the top 100 institutions of these countries to think that way, that ecosystem thinking, the holistic thinking, and that's where the only way we believe equity of wealth and equity of thinking can happen.
No, that's fantastic. Now, 5 years, I think if we can push it to 6 years before the planet is wiped out, it'd be good, because my mutual fund will mature by then,
Sure, I will. But what will you use it for then?
That's what I'm saying. That's
So
the most
use it
thing.
now before the thing.
That's the joke. Like, no, wait, I
No, I
test
know,
you.
I don't.
But before we wind up, Harish, can you talk to me a little bit about this power of the sun that we are trying to harness, power of light and heat and solar? It's of course, we've spoken about the problem statement, but let's just talk about the source of energy in itself. How realistic is its implementation, and also its source as a energy source? How has the technology, because you said 91, what the world produced now can be done in 2 hours, to even maybe look at the problem and use this as a tool with whatever it may be, whether it's energy, solar energy, or whether it's in the case of the skills. How efficient is it right now, the way we're using it?
So it's see, for example, even it was viable in 91, and in 91, 92, we would say that solar is expensive for the rich and affordable for the poor.
Right.
And it's because the poor were spending more on energy for kerosene and diesel, right? And the rich were getting subsidized electricity from fossil fuels, right?
Right.
And so that is where the game. But today's game is what, when I design solar for a sewing machine, people say solar is expensive. Nobody says that the sewing machine is inefficient, right? So it's today the game is not solar panels and batteries. The game is efficiency of dental chairs, efficiency of X-ray machines, efficiency. It's like, why am I powering the old stupid cathode ray TVs, which is guzzling, right? that is where the game is. How do we create, like, the best friend of inefficiency is the grid,
Right.
right? Because you buy a fan, average fan in our country consumes between 50 to 70 watts. Okay.
Yeah.
But the most efficient fans in the world are 30 watts,
Mm.
right? Because you are paying only, you think, oh, capex, yeah, I pay 500 rupees or 400 rupees. But you don't realize that the cost of fan is 1 plus 10 years. The OPEX that you're paying for electricity is also the cost of your fan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that is where the game today is efficiency of appliances. One simple example here. Now you are in Majoli Islands, which is the largest river island in the world, in Assam. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You created a hospital in Jorhat. Even if you gave free services, okay, it's actually not free for the poor to come all the way for 2 days and come to your hospital to get free services. You've lost 2 days of labor and the bus stop, right?
Yeah.
Why? For a dental service that you're giving free. Now, dental companies ka incentive kya? I keep adding value. I have this feature, I have that feature, I have this feature. If you had given me a simple 5 features, which foldable dental chair, I would have provided a solar powered dental chair right at the doorstep of the poor, and they would have paid 50 rupees rather than paying 300 rupees. So it's the design thinking, the efficiency of the dental chair or silk weaving machine. Today, the game is that.
Mm.
And that is where, again, I go back. India has a plethora of those, like you talk of a rice husk mill. Secondly, right, even in rice mills, right, now it's also gender. If a diesel powered rice mill fails, to start the diesel, you not only need a man, you need a strong man to start the diesel engine.
Yeah.
So solar powered rice mill, it's a switch of a button and suddenly gender comes in play, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of solar. Is not about solar panels. How do you democratize that in a manner that everybody can actually use it and use it as a livelihood opportunity? But the problem lies on the other side, on the demand side. Your house design is so poorly designed that you need lighting during daytime, and then you say solar is expensive, right? You're in a city like Bangalore, you're putting glass buildings to show that you're Western and trapping the heat and saying I'm using environmental friendly air conditioners, right?
Oh God.
So this hypocrisy in many ways, the design thought process. So solar is very viable today. I mean, you're talking of when it was super expensive and still the poor bought it in 92, 93.
Yeah.
Today it's a norm, but issue is the game is not on the supply side of electrons, but is on the demand side, needs to change its game.
Yeah, it makes so much sense if I'm trying to just put a solar panel on a car which is a V8 cylinder. It's not going to run, right? Then it's like, oh, obviously the technology of solar is flawed. No. And that's the thing with fascinating about electric cars, right? Like, you know, the idea of a V12 engine is macho, it's masculine, revving the engine, making that noise. But now anyone sitting in a Tesla there's no macho-ness involved. It's fast. That's it. It's efficient.
And street light, I give you an example, in many areas of the street light, when we put a 12 watt solar light, it's very dim. Okay, I said, what is the problem statement of a street light? Is to make sure that you're able to see the other guy, not study for a PhD under it, right?
Yeah.
Why are we putting double the light in the first place? You have the light enough to see other person's face, right? Yeah. So the thought process of efficiency, or even in water pump, right?
No, sorry, Harish, you know why they have to put bright lights? Because they know the footpaths don't exist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because you don't know where the guy has disappeared after that, right?
It's a search and rescue. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. So in the water pump also, right? How much water do you need? Sir, I need 2.5 inch of water coming out. Boss, how many liters per day does your cropping pattern need? Solar alli kammi water baratte, sir. But the question is, it's the question of that problem statement and the inefficiency of the end utilization is what is making the fossil fuel actually succeed, because the best friend of fossil fuels is inefficiency. And if you have to bring in sustainability, you need to bring on the other side. And that's why for anything solar, I mean, in rural Meghalaya and also most of the health centers run on solar, operation theaters run on solar. Godrej himself has put a whole his factory on solar right now. So application is plenty for people.
But with the way things are changing, like for instance now, rivers in Europe are drying up and we're having floods in Pakistan and India. And I'm saying with this total swing in weather patterns. Countries that relied on sunlight through the year, like maybe India or certain parts of Africa or certain parts of the Middle East, um, are seeing a complete shift where it's completely cloudy. The sunshine through the year is not consistent. So how do you plan for that? How do you account for that when you're planning
It's
these
like
things?
saying on top of your roof, for example, if you have four people in your house, and even you have a say 200-liter tank,
Yeah,
right? So and you're getting only three days of water, right? So you design the water tank so that you have water for all 7 days.
yeah,
Same way the solar systems are designed for how many days of the year that you cannot take, for example, and then you increase your storage, that is the battery, and design the solar panels that it stores in the battery so that you can have power. And normally in our case we design it for 3 days of autonomy. That means 3 days if you don't have solar, you're able to you'll have power for what you actually do. In hospitals it depends on the criticality. For example, if it is operation theater, you design it for 10 to 12 days,
yeah.
and saying that if there is no, and then less critical is a television, then you design for 2 days. That's a design issue. That is what people, so it's like Meghalaya has fog till 10 o'clock in the morning and sunsets at 4 o'clock. How do you design it? That's the easiest part of technical design.
Okay. Now, are there
Then
people now, like say I have a conventional home which was built for consuming electricity from the grid. Now, how if say someone is like, I want to, after listening to what Harish said, I want to change and say not listen to all my neighbors, get a consensus and make the building solar powered, but just my house. Is that an option nowadays?
see, in
Like saying in a
apartment it's
flat kind
difficult.
of
In a
environment?
flat it's always difficult. Okay, the
Yeah.
flat issue is, see, why some of the countries like US and Germany have succeeded. See, Germany during weekends, the majority of the power of the country is generated through solar, which is
Mind
five
blowing.
times less the irradiance that we get in our country, right? Where Germany can do it, right? It's
Yeah.
more in the weekend, it generates more, it doesn't know what to do. The second, the pop up, the like in the US and Germany, people work in the cities and live in the suburbs, right? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, in India, we live in the cities and work in the cities.
Yeah.
So there is no true building, what you call codes. Like even if I have a 2-bedroom house, which is with a garden, I never know when is my neighbor going to build a 20-story and suddenly a shadow actually comes in play,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in single apartments, India, in second, third tier cities, we should completely go for it, because these are 1 story, half a story, 2 story. In large apartments, they should be doing it from day one when they are building it,
Yeah.
in a manner that they do it, both water heating as well as lighting, and all the basic lighting, for example, common lighting, whether you like at the lift, the street lights, everything should actually be, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And bring in some design thinking where the solar panels should be installed, so it doesn't become in the middle of it. But those all have to be designed when you're designing it.
Yeah, because
Individual, yeah,
it's like almost like in our building, we've got these 10 panels sitting, these big ones or whatever size, I don't know. But it heats the water, and only one bathroom in the house gets it
okay,
in each
yeah,
apartment.
that's a
I'm like,
design.
why?
Uh-huh. That's a design
Strange.
issue, right?
So I'm just like, why aren't people? I mean, it's obviously from what I'm saying, it's almost like they did it because, oh, look at that building, it's got solar, but it doesn't serve
Right.
any purpose.
No, no, yeah. See, what thoda questioning, Sandeep, we have to do is this, even in like little digressing. When I talk to you about a 200 square foot house in India, you talk
Yeah,
about a poor man's house, right?
yeah,
But a 200 square foot in Tokyo is a rich man's house.
yeah,
Why can't I cheat the design?
yeah,
Why can't I cheat the design today and make all these look like aspirational? I mean, that's the goal today. Is like, how do I make a barber shop aspirational for 2030? Tell me
yeah,
what stops us. It's not the cost. It's a design thought process, right?
yeah,
A Kirana shop. Why can't it be designed for 2030? Yeah.
yeah.
Why? I mean, that's the beauty. Can you imagine if barber shops look like 2030 with no additional cost? It's a little bit of democratizing architecture rather than the same bloody matchbox thinking, right? We
Even with
then,
events,
yeah,
Harish, with
right,
events, why do we need these big stages, big lights, these
right,
30 pole? Like, it's like, I mean, okay, if you're a light show, I understand. But if you're
right,
like
right,
this Intel conference at a banquet hall, you don't need 30 sets
right,
of lights.
right,
And
right.
so I'm just sorry, I interrupted, but just to add to that thing, it's so overkill.
Yes. Absolutely, it's everywhere. It's an overkill. That's why the inefficiencies don't come into play. So we're not designed for efficient thinking. And I mean, so in a simple thing, yeah, many years ago when one of my colleagues was trying to having a solar in cell in Puttur in office. One guy came and he was an auto rickshaw driver. He said, "I want solar in my house." So he asked anything. I wanted how much? Oh, I want a 3-light system. So my colleague was very sure that he could afford a 3-light system. This was in '96. He said, "But I know what the issue is." He went to his house and he went to the top of the house and broke one part of the roof and put one light that was in the middle that could give light in 3 rooms. He said he needed light in 3 rooms. He didn't need 3 lights. Right? Suddenly the cost came down by 1/3.
And this kind of thinking is across disciplines. So if we can only teach efficiency as a thing, it kind of is like the problem. How do people become more efficient, as opposed to how do we become better engineers, how do we become better doctors, become better lawyers? How do people become more efficient in whatever they do, in the way they think, in the way they live, in the way they produce? I mean, that's again not to play on the word produce, but that's again our population, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have 5 kids because the first 3 might not take care of us when we grow old.
Right. Who knows how the other 2 get influenced by the other.
Exactly. So we have issues with produce and produce.
And the reproduce. No, again, transportation, when we talked about, you're not talking about efficiency of movement of people.
Yeah.
You directly jump into the type of transportation we want to do.
Yeah. I mean, if you make people travel less, we're going to have less people on the roads.
Right.
And
exactly.
It's crazy. And it's just how one shift in the way you look at things really sort of takes you back to how to approach the problem, approach the situation. Yeah. Harish, thank you so much for shedding light in certain dark places in my mind on issues. And I think people listening as well. Yeah, it's just the light came on when you said, you know what, it's you don't have to look at a certain thing with solar, batteries and panels. I really like that shift in my head. Thanks. And thanks for all the, I don't want to patronize and say thanks for all the great work, but congratulations on all the really good work.
I think we should meet after you're done. Okay. Thanks, Sandeep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks for having me at the conference. It was people were like, "We went to IIM Bangalore." I said, "Yeah." So thanks for letting me, giving me an opportunity to enter the haloed grounds of the IIM Bangalore.
It was difficult a bit, but we managed.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And people listening can head over to check out the SELCO Foundation, and if they're interested, they can join. I don't know what process you have for recruitment, but I'm sure they can read up on it on your website. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep.